Like, I would never write that app. That would be ridiculous.
It would be ridiculous.
It's not worth the time.
Why would you? No.
Right. But now suddenly the Lego pieces, we've got OAuth, we've got personal access tokens, we've got nice clean REST APIs, a pattern to do it. We've got Python and .NET and JavaScript, all very well understood to go and do these things. And I just said, go and tell me if any meetings are stressing me out. And it turns out that I'm going low blood sugar on Mondays because I don't eat lunch on Mondays. I never put it together until I combined effectively a join across Outlook calendar and my blood sugar. And it took 20 minutes. And then I wrote a report. And then I said, make it a scale and put it in GitHub. And now other people are using it. That's insane. Hi, friends. I'm Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today, I have the extreme pleasure of chatting with Gergely Orosz, the author of the Pragmatic Engineer newsletter, #1 technology newsletter on Substack, and just a lovely gentleman. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Scott. It's really nice to be here and catch up. This time over video. Last time it was in person.
Yeah. We hung out in person for a little while, and now we're on video, we're on audio on the podcast. You've got the Dune Ornithopter Lego on your credibility bookshelf with all of the great books. I see Code Complete by Steve O'Connell there in the background. I can immediately say this is a serious person right now.
Yeah, and I had the extreme joy and privilege to interview Steve McConnell.
Did he sign it?
About a year ago. He did sign. Wait, yes,
oh
he
my
did.
Goodness.
I have a signed book. I'm showing it to the camera.
Oh my God!
And this was a big deal because Steve McConnell, he actually left tech as a whole about 3 years ago. He had an amazing run, and now he's just reinventing himself. But he is just as thoughtful as ever. And the crazy thing about this book, Code Complete, that was so inspiring for me, Steve McConnell wrote this when he had 5 years of experience or so. He wrote 900 pages, which has been the Bible for about 20 years for so many people. And one thing that reminded me is you don't need to wait to have 20 or 30 or 40 years of experience to do something that can be industry defining or helping just so many people. You can start when you have 1 year, 2 years, 3 years of experience. You don't need to wait for longer.
That's a really great thing that you've said, because I've always tried to express to people that I'll read your blog. I don't care how many years you've been doing this, because no one has your perspective. No one has I don't know. Everyone's already written everything there is to write about Python. I don't know your perspective. I don't know how you got into it. I think that's great. That book, Code Complete, that of course is the new version 2. That book came out in 1993. I started coding for money in 92. So Code Complete was literally my entree into software engineering. Like I landed in software around April of 1992 rather, and then Code Complete, like, just people don't understand. It was the biggest thing. It was a word of mouth book. I did not realize that he only had 5 years experience at the time.
Yep.
Wow.
In fact, fun fact, just on like how funny things are, he told me, and I have a podcast episode on my podcast with him where we talk about an hour and a half about these topics. But when he published, apparently the publisher did not expect this book would sell. They just wanted a so-called backfiller in their catalog just to have something there. And apparently the publisher was the most surprised at how many people started to buy. So again, just another thing that even the publisher, even the person who read this 900 pages did not expect this to be big. So sometimes you just got to do things. And even if you don't think it's a big deal, Steve told me that he didn't think this was that revolutionary. I mean, who was he? Like, everyone probably should have known this thing. So just one more thing, just do stuff, put it out there. Worst case is, you might have help one person. And even that's an amazing feeling, I can tell you.
That's a great way to start the conversation, because there's this lovely comedian that I'm mutuals with on TikTok named Rodney Norman, and he looks like a crazy mad scientist, like from Back to the Future, and he's got a wonderful long ZZ Top beard, and he kind of pops up on your screen and he says, you can just do stuff. You don't have to ask permission. You just make things. Okay,
Pretty
have
much.
a great day. And it just, you're just doing your thing, and he's just there to tell you that you can just do stuff. And man, I'm just doing so much stuff right now. I have gotten more done since Opus than probably in the previous 2 years. And by doing stuff, I mean shipping interesting stuff. I feel like I got a rocket ship strapped to my back. Are you having as much fun as I am?
Yeah, I've been very surprised on how just really good these agents have gotten. I'm someone who's skeptical with any hype, any claim. I've been skeptical about crypto, not for the sake of crypto, but just the hyperbolic claims. I've been skeptical about AI because early on, about a year and a half ago, we had people saying, "Oh, here's this AI that's going to replace software engineers." And again, it sounded very hyperbolic and also a little bit depressing, to be fair.
100% agree.
But then I always like to look at stuff. I like to try out firsthand. What can it do? And again, it was pretty good. It was decent autocomplete initially. It then started to do some stuff, but it hallucinated when I used ChatGPT or I tried to use it for anything more complex. Like Cursor early on, the suggestions were maybe not exactly what I was thinking of. But also, like over the winter break, I can still code pretty well if I put myself to it, but I just don't really do it because it's a lot of time to get in the zone. My side projects are I have a lot of side projects, and also I have some of my business runs on my own APIs. I try to build whenever I can. For example, for a newsletter group subscriptions, there's like a self-service API. Companies can sign up and their whole domain can go on there and they get reporting and all that stuff. I built that on a tech stack that I wasn't that familiar at the time. I wanted to play with Express.js and Node.js and TypeScript. And every now and then I go back to it, but it always took me about 30 minutes to like get back, remember the structure. Thank God I have tests. So whenever I make a change, I can actually tell if I broke something. And this winter break, I just went there again. Like I have so many ideas. And, like this time I heard Cloud Code is great. So I just told Cloud Code, like, build this endpoint and build me this feature. And it did it. And then I looked at it and I said, run the test. And it did. And the tests. And then I looked at it and like one of the tests was not great. So I had to fix it. But then it did it, and I found myself that I had spent about 5 minutes on this thing, and it's already added a thing that I thought would take me 2 hours, 30 minutes to get in the zone, an hour to be in there. And then my wife said, like, hey, how long are you going to be? And usually whenever I'm coding or writing for that, like being in the zone, my time estimate is terribly off, and this is a lot of source of conflict. But with this one, I was like, just one more minute. And I literally just put another prompt. And then I stood up and I went for dinner. And my wife was like, oh, what happened? Like, you're early. Like, were you not working? I'm like, I was working, but I'm using this thing, this agent. And I'm just having this wow moment again and again and again. Another story was where, again, I had this like massive wow moment. On my website, I have testimonials of like, people saying nice things about the newsletter or podcasts on Twitter, real people. And I paid about $100 a month for this software as a service where I can they have a very simple admin interface where I can post a Twitter link. It generates a kind of UI and I can embed it with an iframe and I pay for the service. And I got a bit pissed because I didn't get an invoice from them. Turns out this service has been like sold twice over. Their invoice system is a mess. I have a new invoice coming up. I don't know how much I'm going to pay. And I was thinking to myself, like, hang on, like, can I not have an agent replace this? Because I know I'm paying and stuff. I just don't want to maintain an HTML file that has all these nicely formatted things. So I told the agent, hey, go there, collect all these testimonials, put it in a structure that is easy to maintain, because I'm thinking about that already, put it in a JSON format, and like put it separately, and in build time generate this HTML and then show me the results. And in about, I actually measured it, end-to-end 20 minutes, I went from, I have the third party that I'm depending on to, I have no third party. The build is passing. It's now pushed out to production, and I did 2 tweaks to it, and I'm done. Yep. And to me, this is mind blowing, like the implications. So, like until now, like again, as a software professional, as someone who knows how to code, knows how to deploy, I was willing to pay. Like my time is pretty valuable. I kind of like value my time roughly as like, I don't know, something like $300 an hour or $200 an hour when I work for kind of myself, because I want to put a value on the time. So for me, if it takes an hour, it's worth paying for me $100 a month. And you can agree or disagree with this. But now it took me 20 minutes to replace it for good. Why would I pay $100? So yeah, just like you, I've been mind blown with how many things I can do, not to mention like personal expenses, some of these things. It's just opening a whole new world. And it's not just me or you. I'm talking to a lot of people, folks working at startups, as engineers, and everyone's having this like, this winter break was the weirdest winter break. People are coming back and saying, weird. Damn, like so many things work, and everyone's changing like how they work, experimenting, and just getting a lot more stuff done.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 quick stories. So the back end for Hansel Minutes, which has been this way for probably 15 years, maybe longer, the podcast is over 20 years old, is JavaScript files in Azure Storage. And once a week, I would take 10 or 15 minutes. I'd open it in Visual Studio Code. I'd edit the JavaScript files. which would express a new show has come out, and then there's a linkage to some advertising. And every single week, I was like, one of these days, I'm going to take a weekend. I'm going to write an admin. I wrote an admin. I used GitHub Copilot CLI. I used Opus 4.5. It was 42 minutes. It took longer to figure out how to deploy it to the cloud than it did to write the thing. And I think that's thing number one. And then a couple weeks ago, I used a blood sugar management system called Night Scout, which is an open source software, and I have a REST API, which is my blood sugar. So when I'm overseas or I'm traveling, my wife can see my blood sugar on like screens around the house and things like that. And there's a notification if my blood sugar goes high or goes low. It's very specific, it's very grounded, and it's a number. I don't want to hallucinate that. But I now want to have joins with other data, like how does my blood sugar interact when I walk, when I travel, when I eat certain foods, when I'm in certain meetings. So now there's ambiguity. The agent loop, the agentic loop, is an ambiguity loop. And that ambiguity loop then now allows me to join two things. So I used two pieces of data, one, my blood sugar system, and the other one is a thing called Work IQ, which is effectively like talking to the Microsoft Graph. So it's like, using Google Calendar API. And I just said, are any meetings correlating with my blood sugar? Like, I would never write that app. That would be ridiculous.
It would be ridiculous. Why would you? No.
Right. But now suddenly the Lego pieces, we've got OAuth, we've got personal access tokens, we've got nice clean REST APIs, a pattern to do it. We've got Python and .NET and JavaScript, all very well understood to go and do these things. And I just said, go and tell me if any meetings are stressing me out. And it turns out that I'm going low blood sugar on Mondays because I don't eat lunch on Mondays. I never put it together until I combined effectively a join across Outlook calendar and my blood sugar. And it took 20 minutes. And then I wrote a report. And then I said, make it a scale and put it in GitHub. And now other people are using it. That's insane.
Yeah. And I was always skeptical when I heard the return of personal software, because I've been hearing for 10 plus years. The personal software is here. But I was skeptical just personally because I personally did not see it. And again, you might have seen more than I have. Mm-hmm. But I'm starting to become a believer in the sense that I mean, what you told me and also what I'm doing, it's kind of personal software. It's software that I wanted for myself or for a very small business. And for example, for my own business, the Pragmatic Engineer, it would not make sense. It would have never made sense to hire anyone. So I was buying SaaS services, even though I'm a software engineer. And now with AI, I would have not hired anyone at all. It just would have not been built. And now I'm building stuff. And also, oftentimes, as you say, you're building stuff that just would have not made sense at all to build.
This is a great point. I'm not going to buy a back end for my bespoke podcast any more than you're going to buy, well, you did pay for this embedded thing, but now you're probably wondering, why is that a business? And now the question is, should you spin off the thing you wrote as its own business? This is the other thing I'm watching people do, spin off 30, 40 little tiny micro SaaSes for other people.
Yeah, that's a good question, what will happen with micro SaaS. But when you said your open sourcing thing, one thing that I'm also hearing, my brother startup, they just open source kind of a visual representation of Claude code that they built for themselves, and other people can use it. And he's seeing a lot of remixing going in open source where, for example, in that open source project, he does not want to merge other people's pull requests because he wants to keep the direction. Like he wants to keep it consistent. So he looks at the whatever comes in a pull request and he looks at the idea. And if he likes it, he will then use the agent to actually build it the way he thinks it should be done. So strong control. But what he's seeing here is a lot of people are forking off their open source project and remixing it, because with an agent, again, you can tell an agent like, hey, generate a pull request and hope someone merges it, or you can just say like, hey, make this change in the software in this fork, especially when it's open source. And a lot of people are putting it on GitHub as open source because again, it's easy. Open source projects are I think for free, or maybe it's free otherwise. But we might see an explosion in open source because of this remixing nature. It's very interesting.
This is the thing, though. We're hearing this term slop, an AI slop, and some people are saying, well, this is just slop. But if it works well and it's personal and it's only on your machine and it does the thing you want it to do, maybe it's not slop at all. Two things that I remixed recently. The Mac has that ring light that is a feature. I made a Windows ring light, had a lot of fun with it. So it's basically an artificial drawn ring light. And then just literally 2 days ago on Hacker News, I saw the most clever thing called posture for Mac, where if you slouch, it detects that you slouched and it
Amazing.
blurs your screen. So then it causes you to have to sit up straight in order to, make your screen clear again. So I told Copilot CLI to go and make me a Windows version. So now I have an application that literally dims the screen if my posture is bad to force me to think about it. That's just silly personal software. And now we've got Claude Bot. I just spun up in WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, and I'm debating if I should run it in my Synology, which would be my NAS, my network access server. So why shouldn't I have a little server in my own house doing my own thing, plus something like Home Assistant? I'm curious, are you a Home Assistant person?
And not as much. I use it a little bit, but I've just not. I think I don't have the integrations for it, but I could see myself using it. But I totally agree with you. Like the idea of personal assistant. Like I feel we're back into the good old days of when PCs were starting to become mainstream, where we just had homemade software, like it was distributed on the intranet, and you controlled your own hardware and you had your own software. Like again, for a personal assistant, why could I not have it run on my stuff and me choosing my subscriptions and me choosing what it has access to? It feels like the hacker mentality is back. There was a time for hackers in the 90s and pop fiction everywhere, but it was happening, I remember. And then it kind of went away the last few years, decades.
Yeah, I feel like other than the part where the LLM runs in the cloud, a lot of this stuff can be done internally. And I always try to think about, would my software work in airplane mode? Right. I just feel like that's important. And my house needs to work in airplane mode.
And also, don't forget, I personally think it's just a matter of time, a matter of years, where LLM will run on your machine. I mean, there's a lot of work being done. I know the Windows 11 team is doing a bunch of stuff around infrastructure pieces to make that one day happen. LLMs are getting smaller, and actually some of them run on your laptop. They're just not nearly as good as state of the art. But again, I'm hoping this will be the case because.
I 100% agree. I've got, LM Studio is a fantastic app. Everyone talks about Olama, but they're sleeping on LM Studio, lmstudio.ai. Running that, it then presents an OpenAI endpoint that's available inside your house. Totally works locally. And if you do that, plus a GPT 20 billion OSS, you've got a perfectly good model that will run inside your house. It makes me wonder, will it run on your laptop? Will it run on your desktop? Or, again, I bring up this idea of the NAS. If you remember things like Windows Home Server, the Synologies, TrueNAS, FreeNAS, why wouldn't I have a tiny machine that would sit in a closet that would provide a totally private LLM for the family?
100% agree. I have NAS is running backing by Dropbox already, and it's already on. I wouldn't mind doing a little inference when we need it.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see over here. People who are listening won't be able to see it, but this is a Reachy Mini robot that is from Hugging Face. And this is a little robot that you buy from Hugging Face, and then you can deploy. It's got a Raspberry Pi in it, and then you can have it do stuff. It took me about 15 minutes to create a skill. So when Copilot CLI is done with something, he'll celebrate. It's so much more interesting and personal to hack and build your own robot than to yap at Alexa, who's just going to remind you that to buy more crap. I built that guy, and he can talk to me, and he'll order food, and he'll put things on my grocery list, and he'll dance when my build is done. That's make the web weird again is kind of where I'm at. Yeah. So have you looked at Claude Bot? Have you been spending time with that? Because there's a lot of controversy about the security aspect of it. And I think people should just relax a little bit because everything starts insecure to start with.
So interesting, you would say, because I talked with Peter Steinberger. I met him in London 2 weeks ago, and I have a podcast episode coming out.
Oh, great.
It will have been out by the time we talked. So I knew a little bit of Claude Bot before, but he showed me on his phone. And he showed me what he had it hooked up, and it was wild. Again, he gave it full access to all these things. He is living on the edge, and he's very clear, by the way, that you should probably not do this. He is YOLOing it. I mean, he's not giving access to the bank account, some other things, but he's giving way wider access than I would be comfortable with. But then he showed me how he uses it day to day. He showed it. He kind of it wasn't demoing. He was just like using it. And after 5 minutes, my thinking was like, oh my gosh, this is what Siri would be like in 10 years, but he has it working here. I mean, it's got a lot of shortcuts, clearly, like a lot of things that you need.
What's an example of something that blew your mind? Because I use Siri and I want to preface this by saying I'll use Siri very often for things like geofencing. So I'll say, remind me when I get home to do this. And I find that magical. I could say, hey, make me an appointment with Gergely tomorrow at this location. Those things are nice, but it's the giving it arms and legs part that's interesting.
So, like, he showed me how he uses this. He just tells it to book me an appointment, for example, for his barber. And it goes off. And the wild thing about that was that it tried to go online, but it struggled or something crashed for some reason, or it had an issue with the browser. And it created itself a voice skill using 11 Labs, which it had access to because he has like he has a subscription, and actually made the call without asking him. So, and it then added this skill to the functionality. It's all in the logs though. So
sure.
But the fact that it's an agent that can improve itself already, this was well, then it got the stuff done that he wanted, which was a bit of a scary thing for me. Like, okay, I just went off and like actually made this call with 11 Labs wild. But which
is funny because that's what Google did, and everyone thought that was creepy.
Yeah, and you can decide where you are, but again, this is the fact that it can, and it can do a lot of things where it can figure stuff out, and it can browse, and it can create a new skill for itself, which is very, very surprising. I think this has so many like fascinating and slightly terrifying implications, but I'm more on the fascinating side. Mm-hmm. And then the other side, which was crazy, he took a photo of two of us and said like, hey, like who am I here with? And it looked at the photo, it analyzed it, it ran a search, and then it cross-referenced his calendar and said like, oh yeah, this is going to be Gergely. Like that was easy because I just have you here. But what really, the biggest thing that fascinated me is how hooked Peter was with his agent and how much it was tuned onto his personality. It knew what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And it was, I'll be honest, it felt a bit weird on how clearly addicted to it was. And I'm kind of thinking there's going to be a danger. And I mean, you look at a danger or opportunity. Like, I know people were addicted to ChatGPT, but this is going to be way more addictive. And it might not be Claude Bot, but it might be the next version that's out there. No, but
it's the concept of immediacy. Like we are men of a certain age, but the idea that like you used to wait 6 to 8 weeks for the thing to come in the mail, and now if it's not there by the afternoon, you're upset. Or you used to wait 2 to 4 weeks to get your passport renewed. If you can't renew it overnight, you're mad. The idea that you can have food delivered to you by a stranger, or a stranger can bring their car to you and then take you anywhere is amazing. And if that breaks down, we will have a group of helpless people who are unable to do anything for themselves, much less do their own laundry.
Yeah. But to your question on the security, like I kind of view it like I'm also a bit more chill about it. Like I remember the times where Windows was just starting to become big in the 90s, where I was getting my first machines. And, the way you got software is you kind of pass it on floppy disks. And later there were websites that you could download it. And of course, later there were ways to get, like so-called cracks for a lot of the games had protections with like, you had numbers to fill in from manual and all that. And there were cracks that would crack this or make a modification, and people were downloading that, and a lot of it was viruses, and a lot of people got nasty viruses, and the computers did all sorts of stuff. And over time, people learned, well, A, this is bad. B, like, okay, we will have like protection like antivirus, or turn to a professional in your family on what to do. And I think we're gonna have exactly the same age where these AI agents can do a lot of stuff. If you give access to sensitive stuff, they will be both more powerful, but also they can be a lot more vulnerable, and they can do like crazy stuff. So I think we'll have a whole learning, except it'll happen a lot faster because now the whole world has access, and it'll be a lot bigger storm.
Did you have? We're a little bit different in age. Did you come up putting like your homework on a floppy disk, like a thesis? Or were you a little beyond that?
I was a little beyond that. It was already email for me.
So there was a saying back when we used to carry our homework around on a 3.5-inch floppy that like everyone has to lose their thesis once. It's like a rite of passage. Yeah. Like you're walking around with your entire PhD thesis on a 3.5 floppy, and you leave it out in the sun or whatever, and then you call a friend with Norton Disk Doctor. So like that happens one time, right? You get your Twitter hacked, or you lose your Dropbox key, or you lose your Bitcoin in a dump somewhere. Somebody's going to get absolutely destroyed at some point. But in doing that, we will all learn. Yep. So when I say I'm less chill about it, the idea that you have to ship it sloppy and wide open first in order to get what is the limit here? And he's obviously on the limit. I had a delightful moment with ClaudeBot recently. I installed it in, so I'm on Windows. I installed it in WSL, which is the subsystem within Windows, because I want it sandboxed. It's not a legitimate sandbox in the sense of there's no auditing, but it's extremely transparent that it stores everything in memories. And I talk a lot about this, and I'm curious what you think. I call it AI's uncanny valley, right? The uncanny valley in like 3D animation is like, ooh, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with their face? Like The Rock and the Scorpion King. It's like, it's clearly bad CG. If an AI breaks into the uncanny valley and calls your barber on your behalf, that would break deeply into the uncanny valley for me. But I gave it access to my...
But that was a task to book an appointment.
Right, but it did it by any means necessary. And I would need to say, don't like, that's too far. Like, it would have to have a sense of taste. But but I do like the idea of proactivity, because a good assistant, I took it upon myself to put you in the aisle seat because I know you love the aisle. That's cool. You know what I mean? Oh, I put you in first class because I love you, and I charged it, and I opened a credit card for you. I didn't think you'd mind. That's not okay, right?
Yep.
But I told her about my blood sugar, right? And I said, remind me if my blood sugar goes too high, because it has cron jobs. And I'm looking at it right here. It said, I also added a low because you're diabetic and lows are more dangerous. I'd rather be more annoying than let a low blood sugar slide. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah.
That's very, like, I don't know. It's enthusiasm. It's easily solved. It's all in a markdown file. I think that there's the novelty of it, but there's also the idea that I know why it's happening. Like, if you compare it to Siri, I don't know why it thinks these things. I don't know what weird stuff it knows about me. Or Alexa, it's in the cloud somewhere. Yep. But with this, it's in a file it's literally called soul.md. Yep. And I think that Windows, and I think that, everyone, Mac, all the big players can learn about it. Just put it in a text file in a folder, and I will trust it more. But if you hold it in the cloud, I don't trust you if I can't see the file. I'm curious what you think about that.
I like it. I mean, I think it's worth looking at why Claude has become so popular so quickly, to the point that it is, and how it's pulling in so many different people, not just software engineers, but non-software engineers as well, and all built by one person who is scratching their itch to have this, like this imaginary future assistant that can do all of these things. So like I'm just mostly fascinated by, like, first of all, like, it gives me a little bit of hope into software engineering as a whole. So Peter was an amazing software engineer before. He built PSPDFKit, and then he just took a very long break, and he came back and he started to obsessively create stuff. He built a lot of different projects. There was one where you could remotely run your agent from your phone on your server, this kind of stuff. And if I look at ClaudeBot, we talk a lot. There's a lot of talk about vibe coding. What happens with software engineering now that the AI can write all the code? Which he is letting AI write all the code. He uses Codex, I believe, because he likes the long running tasks. But when I talk with him, the crazy thing about it is he keeps the architecture so much in his head. He is so opinionated about how to build it. He refactors all the time. And when I talked with him, I felt like this is a software engineer, an architect who. This is his baby. Like, he's the one merging all of the pull requests single-handedly.
Really?
That's also what. Yeah. Well, I think he might have like one or two people helping, but for the most part, it's just him.
See, if you juxtapose that with the enthusiasm around Ralph loops and autonomy and agents that do the merging itself, it's interesting that here's a person who's obsessive about what he wants ClaudeBot to do. He's obsessive about its tasks. He's vibe coding all of it, but then he's also curating each pull request manually, and not.
Pete actually says he doesn't believe in the Ralph idea. He thinks that's just like you've not given the prompts. He spends a lot of time, so he runs about 5 or 6 or 7 parallel agents. He spends a lot of time with each of them planning. He asks them, what
Mm.
about this? What about that? And when he's happy with the plan, it's a bit like a tech lead. He says, okay, go and do it. And then he likes Codex because Codex will go and it will work away up to like an hour or even longer sometimes. And so, like, and if I look at success, I think this is where, like, let's look at the output. Claude is clearly popular, it's hitting a nerve, and it's evolving with people, and it does have a personality and a taste, and it's consistent.
Claude Bot.
I love to
Claude.
see.
Are you talking Claude Opus or Claude Bot?
Sorry, Claude Bot. Yeah,
Yes,
and now it's called Moltbot. He just renamed it because like it was getting confusing and Anthropic.
Oh wow, he renamed it.
Yeah, that was today. It's called Moltbot, so it's still the crab bot, the Moltbot. So like he built a product this way where one person is in charge, one person is kind of the architect. And I would just love to see a successful Ralph project, which is also successful. People like it, where the AI went off and did it. I don't have an example yet, which does not mean it does not exist. But I'd love to see if, like, we're in an age where I'm sure eventually something will pop up. But to me, Ralph seems a little bit like, I'm kind of lazy. Let me see if the AI can do and make all the decisions. And as a professional, I would like to think that it makes a difference. Who is sitting behind the wheel, and doing this. And we'll see if this will be more of a self-driving thing where, like after a while, when the car is doing a good enough job, it doesn't really matter that you're behind it. Or but because the roads are so well mapped and the streets are so well known. But if it's rough terrain, I remember I was in Mongolia where the roads are very, very rough and we were going on rough terrain. And this driver was insane on how they drove. To me, it all looked the same, but sometimes we were doing crazy turns. And then you realize that he saw the land that would be mushy. He saw the riverbeds that would go around.
This is an expert.
And it's an expert, and I'm sure that expert can also use like sometimes he'll like turn on or use assists as well. But I love creating software. I used to say that I loved coding, and I'm not sure that's true. That ever was true. I think I learned to like it, and I loved being good at it. I loved that few people could do it. I still kind of love when I do stuff with code that no one can do. When we go to the movie theater, the website does not allow you to book a ticket that has one seat in between. Well, guess what? It's a JavaScript only side trick. And I figured it out pretty early.
I literally hit that yesterday, where I did not want to sit next to random people. But
yeah, so it's a client side thing, and I can go around it, and everyone in my friend group knows me. And sometimes people ask me to do it for them. It makes me feel special. Like it's like out of the 10 or 20 immediate people I know, no one else can do it, and it's not a big deal. You just open DevTools, you figure out which class it is, you place a breakpoint, and then you override the variable, right?
Sure.
But you know what I mean? Like, and that's what I mean. Like I would like to think that. I think we'll have an identity crisis, or we already are as software engineers, figuring out, okay, if AI can write all these things, what makes us special? But I think there is something much more than coding that makes us special. And I think we should cultivate that. And that's why I love what Peter is doing, which is like, he is in charge. He is the architect. He has a taste. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of like, let's give it to Ralph.
You just nailed it, though. And I love that you said it without me having to say it, because the word is taste.
Yep.
The word is taste. He has a perspective. I would love to chat with him sometime, because I appreciate when someone has a perspective, whether it be DHH on Rails, it was opinionated. If it's David Fowler on Aspire, he's got an opinion. I disagree on the Ralph thing, though, because it's not all or nothing. Because David Fowler, distinguished engineer in .NET and architect of Aspire, is a great example. He would never architect the Aspire orchestrator with a Ralph loop. However, they had 400 or 500 bugs that were all reported, and they couldn't confirm that they were real bugs. Mm-hmm. So he ran a Ralph loop, which I just think of being a really tenacious loop. Mm-hmm. It's just an infinitely patient junior engineer. I would never put an infinitely patient junior engineer on an architecture problem. But he went and he said, hey, go and look at these 400 bugs and reproduce them. And I think it reproduced like 368 of them, and then added context. It was literally the very definition of toil. That's what a Ralph loop is for. But I don't think a million monkeys and a million keyboards could create something amazing. Like they always say that an infinite number of monkeys and they could make Shakespeare, but they need good taste.
I think you're right in the sense that where everything is so new. Like I feel as a professional, as an engineer, the engineering mindset is like, look, we've got this new thing. Like like the kind of
Well, we have a new
am-
hammer, right? Is
yeah,
everything a nail?
the new hammer, but like I'm like the kind of the amateur approach is like you're kind of wow, this is so cool, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, or the novice is like it's magic, it can do all these things, and the engineering mindset is cool. What are the limits? How well does this work? When does
What
it
are the
break?
limits?
How far can I go? And I think that's what we need to figure out. Like it's like okay, well, how can we use it? When does it work? Ralph, that's an interesting technique, which is what you said. Like when is it a great use? When has it been? And you just add it to your tool set, and then you figure out which ones to use based on the problem, based on honestly your mood and your energy levels and what you want to get out of it. There's also this thing like, when you use AI, do you actually want to learn about a problem? Claude Code has a mode where it can actually challenge you and it gives you tasks. I tried to use it and it looks like a good idea, but it didn't really work. But it's like, how much do I want to learn about a topic? Because then I will be more involved versus if it's routine and toil. And yeah, I feel like as professionals, like the best thing anyone can do is use all these things, learn them, have firsthand experience. Do not believe what you read on the internet or validate it because you want to have those strong opinions. And then, you have this like your tool set has gotten bigger. If you have a bunch of 20 plus years of experience, you already have a long tool set, add some more tools. If you have less experience, add these tools and get really good at them. And you're going to add a lot more as you go.
Well, and that's going to be a problem because people who are incurious are going to become not just incurious, but ultimately just quite lazy. If you don't want to learn more, if you just want to get it done, then it's no disrespect to the Swedes, it's kind of IKEA furniture versus bespoke furniture. Like, what kind of a craftsperson do you want to be? And that's going to be challenging. Do you want to just get from point A to point B, or do you want to learn how the engine operates? Now, what book have you grabbed off of the Gergely bookshelf?
And this was like when you say like if you're not learning, the best example of this is Chip Huon who wrote the book AI Engineering.
Okay.
And I had her on the podcast as well. And one of the most surprising things, so she is one of the biggest experts on AI engineering and how to like build these tools, how you use RAG and embeddings and all these things. And it's an amazing book. Like if you're doing anything with LMs or want to do, just read it, get it. It's such a great investment. One of the surprising things I had is she had this really nice graph in the book that I'm showing that shows the cumulative GitHub repositories based on
explosion,
based on what types of if they're applications, AI engineering, model report, infrastructure, and there's 900 repositories over a nice thing, and over like a few years, and so she's kind of showing trends. And I asked her like, cool, like what kind of AI did you use to like categorize these 900 repositories? She said, I didn't use an AI, I did it by hand. I was like, hold on. This is an AI engineering book.
By hand, or by for loop by hand?
She said she manually categorized them for the most part. And I said, like, why would you do it manually? She said, like, one of the most underrated things in ML engineering is that you want to put manual work up front because it gets you better results. And she said that manual work is underrated for a few reasons. You will have better quality data. You will also learn a bit more. And then when you figure out the patterns, you do automate some things. But she said that people working in ML engineering do actually not shy away from manual work because it makes the end result better. So, like, to me, this is just a reminder. If you use AI for anything automation, it can do all these things. Like, the people I think who will be a lot more successful professionally are the ones who do not shy away from start by doing manual work at first and only then move to automating it when you're like sick and tired of it.
Yes, that's a great point. Like, you have to do the thing and then say, okay, now I want to perfect the thing, and now I want to package it up and do it at scale. I do feel like this reminds me, we were talking before we started recording about kind of like our sense of history and like, having done this for 10, 20, 30 years. There's inflection points, and I've experienced 4, and I'm curious what you think about this. When I started in assembler, I would have neckbeards, non-gender specific neckbeards, just people who are old programmers say, you don't want to use C. That's for the weak. Real programmers, poke it directly into a register. And then there was IntelliSense. I literally had people tell me that, syntax highlighting would rot your brain. And, don't let it autocomplete. Yep. That was one. Then there was the Stack Overflow moment where we just started copy pasting directly into production.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're experiencing the death of coding. And people think that means it's the death of the craft because we've suddenly got a power tool that knows how to it's like when you see those TikToks where they can like rip up an entire tree and chop it up into boards instead of like cutting it down. In the US, we have this thing called the Yankee Workshop, where it's like a man alone in his kind of like Amish barn with just like a planing tool, and he just does it the old fashioned way. And that's why I try to like build silly robots and make Commodore 64s. And, I saw the Primogen writing a VI for C64. Like, we're going to see a return to bespoke software for fun and interesting and unique and creative work. But I don't want to make another React database, like text boxes over data. So toil, I am willing to give up if it frees up time to do interesting craftsperson work.
Yeah, I think like these inflection points are real, and I've seen all of them except for the assembly. I've only heard about that one, but when I joined the workforce, I was using ReSharper and highlighting, and
wow,
the old timers were like, this is going to like it's
I remember when ReSharper came
like
out.
I was dissed at, and then I was the generation that was dissing people for using Stack Overflow because I'm like, you don't need that, and it's inaccurate and all that. So I was kind of already by I have a few years experience, but this is like there's a few things like in the industry, like people surprisingly don't like change, even though the industry has been about change. But after a few stable years, people forget about it and they get good at it, and they're very resistant to this, and it's hard to get rid of. If you've gone to a few cycles, it's a bit easier. So, anyone who's feeling bad about this change, like, don't worry, it's going to happen in like 5-10 years again. So might as well just get used to that.
What does it say? The only thing that is constant is change.
Yeah. But I do think a big thing that will change, and I have seen this play out as well with the inflection points, your typical software engineer changes a lot. In the early 2000s, when I entered the field, the top software engineers, the top software developers were antisocial but brilliant. They were brilliant jerks. They were assholes. But they were highly respected, at least in the companies that I worked at, because they were the ones who could wrangle all this code, and they could fix the bugs, and they wouldn't hoard knowledge, but they were highly paid, highly respected. As time progressed, and we had Stack Overflow, and it became a bit easier to onboard. It became easier to figure out maybe the code. Like, I think those people still got valued, but people who are a bit more social and collaborative started to become a little bit more valued. Now that we had the internet, conferences, online forums, like including Stack Overflow, the people who start to be valued by, I think, the top tech companies were both like really good software engineers, but also kind of good at teamwork, collaboration.
Well, it's humans in the loop. We keep hearing humans this term, humans in the loop. Like, we never should have tolerated brilliant assholes.
Yep.
And unfortunately, many of the brilliant assholes, and we won't speak their names, have recognized that, and in their older age become quite pleasant people that acknowledge that if you're not making software for people, whether it be yourself or your family or your friends, or to make someone's life better, then what are you even doing? So
yeah, but in some of the recent job adverts of like modern companies that are doing a bunch of AI stuff, I no longer see technologies listed, but I do see, for example, empathy for customers. I see a lot more soft skills being listed. Like, if you just search for product engineer at any company that has raised funding, a VC funded company that has raised funding in the last like 1 or 2 years, and it's almost like it's describing this really pleasant colleague. And I've talked with some of these companies and how they hire, and they reject a lot based on soft skills, on not being open enough, and because a lot of the work is becoming software engineers talk with customers. They sit with meetings with them. They ask, like, how are you using that? Like, oh, that's interesting. Can you tell me more? And this is a brand new persona that was not a developer. Like, this used to be a project manager or product manager back in the day. So I think the profession is changing, where what is valued is changing, because again, I think it goes back to like back in the like 60s, 70s, 80s, there were so few people who could understand how to write that really, really difficult assembly code, and then of course C and all those things. And the personalities were as they were. I mean, it just happens. But now there's so many more people. Everyone can write code with AI, but now we need people who can still engineer, who are empathetic, and can do all these other things as well. So it's interesting to see how the profession changes, and I think it's really worth paying attention. Like, if you're in this industry, pay attention to what's happening and see if you're lacking some of those skills. Get that experience. Like, if you have a few years of experience, you're in the industry, congratulations. Like, that's great, because it's harder and harder to get into the industry. If you're not yet in the industry, know that these things will also become valuable.
That is a great place to end, because it is a very pragmatic perspective. And as you are the pragmatic engineer, I appreciate you offering your perspective and spending so much time with me today.
It was great, Scott. Thanks very much.
Thank you. You can check out more of Gergely at pragmaticengineer.com. You can subscribe to the #1 technology newsletter on Substack. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.